Struggling rancher rescued an 18-year-old girl from a cruel household. What happened next changed everything. Behind the saloon in Dustwell, Arizona, the sun had dipped low enough to cast the desert in copper and shadow. Heat still clung to the walls, and the wooden post behind the building reeked of spilled whiskey and blood. Tied to that post was Etta Mae Colton, 18, barefoot, bruised, and caked in dust. Her arms were lashed behind her, rope biting deep into skin rubbed raw. Her chin hung low, eyes vacant, as if whatever soul she had once clung to had long since taken flight. Men passed by with half-interested glances. A few spat. One or two laughed. A drunken voice called out something vile, earning a chuckle from another. But no one helped. No one asked why a girl was tied like a dog behind a place where men lost their pay, and sometimes their teeth. Etta did not flinch. Not when they whistled. Not when someone threw a bone at her feet like bait. She had run out of reactions weeks ago. The numbness was safer than hope. The saloon doors swung open with a screech, and a man in a stained vest stepped out, his gait wide and his jaw set like a poker hand waiting to be called. Frank Lubbock, her stepfather, swaggered toward her, holding a tin cup and the stench of rocket on his breath. "She stays there till I get my money," he slurred to no one in particular. From the edge of the street came the quiet sound of hoofs. Calder Boone rode in slow, his black gelding steady under the late sun. He was a broad-shouldered man with wind-beaten skin and a coat that had seen better decades. His face was hard as leather, eyes hidden beneath the brim of his hat. He had the look of someone used to silence, and someone the silence answered to. He stopped. He did not dismount. He did not ask questions. Frank noticed him then, narrowing his eyes at the horseman. "What do you want?" he barked. Calder's voice came low. "That girl." Frank sneered, spitting into the dirt. "Ain't for sale. She's payment. Gambling debt. My debt. Paid in flesh, like the old laws. She ain't got no papers. She ain't got no name worth saving." Calder reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a pouch. Coins clinked softly inside. "3 times what you lost," he said simply, and tossed it to the ground between them. Frank blinked. "You deaf or just stupid?" Calder dismounted then, slow and deliberate. Dust swirled around his boots. He walked to where Etta hung limp against the post, unsheathed the knife from his belt, and cut the rope without another word. The strands fell like snakes to the ground. Etta didn't move at first. She stayed slumped, blinking into the dirt. Calder held out a hand. She looked at it, then at him. No fear, no trust, just the mechanical recognition that this man was not the same one who had tied her up. She reached out, took it. He led her to the pack mule tethered beside his horse. She climbed up on the animal's back without a sound, no hesitation, no plea for water. She just followed. Frank shouted something behind them, about lawmen, about contracts, about curses, but Calder never looked back. Dusk kicked up behind them as they rode out of Dustwell. The saloon lights faded. The voices faded. The world behind them grew quiet. Etta rode with her head down, arms folded across her middle like a child afraid of being touched. After a long time she spoke, not loud, not hopeful. "Are you going to sell me to someone else?" Calder did not turn his head. "No." She nodded. A beat passed. "Are you going to hit me if I fall asleep?" "No." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Will you lock me up in a barn?" He said nothing for a moment. Then, softly, "There ain't a lock on my place." The desert stretched ahead, wide and gold. Her hands trembled, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to exhale. She did not cry. But something in her loosened, like a rope cut clean. The trail to Calder Boone's ranch was long, silent, and soaked in dusk. Etta didn't ask where they were going. She didn't care. As long as it was away, she'd follow. The mule plodded behind Calder's horse, the steady rhythm of hooves a strange comfort after so many nights filled with shouting and slamming doors. When the small cabin came into view, nestled against a hill of scrub pine and golden rock, it didn't look like much. A sagging porch, a chimney of crumbling brick, and a roof patched more with hope than timber. But it was quiet, no dogs barking, no men yelling, no locks hanging from the barn doors. Calder dismounted and helped her down gently, his hand firm but not rough. He didn't touch her longer than needed. He didn't speak. He led her inside. The place was small, a single room with a stove in the corner, a rough-hewn table, and 2 chairs. Against the wall sat a narrow bed covered with a faded quilt. Above it, a shelf of books leaned crooked beside a lantern. Everything was worn but clean. Everything felt real. He gestured toward the chair, then disappeared through a back door. When he returned, He brought water, cold from the well, and a slice of bread with thick-cut cheese. He set them in front of her without comment. Etta stared at the plate. He sat across from her, pouring himself a cup of water. Still he didn't speak. She picked up the bread slowly, hands trembling. It was the first time in weeks, maybe months, she wasn't afraid to eat. She chewed slowly, eyes darting to him once, then back to the food. When she finished, she whispered, "Thank you." Calder just nodded. Afterward, he brought out a small metal basin, filled it with warm water, and left it near the hearth. A towel hung from a nearby hook. He didn't say what it was for. He didn't have to. Etta looked at it, then at him. "I can wash later," she murmured. "Do it now if you want," he said simply. "I'll be outside." And he left. She bathed quickly, scrubbing away the grime of dust and blood, washing her hair for the first time in what felt like forever. The water darkened fast, but she felt lighter after. When she stepped out of the corner, wrapped in one of the linen shirts he'd left on the bed, she found the fire banked low, and Calder already stretched out on a cot near the window with his hat over his eyes. She stood uncertainly, then whispered, "Where do I sleep?" He pointed toward the main bed. "That's yours," he said. "No one else here." Her voice cracked. "I don't want to be locked in." Calder shifted slightly but didn't open his eyes. "There ain't a single lock in this place," he said. Etta turned toward the bed and lay down slowly, one hand still gripping the edge of the quilt like it might vanish. The mattress was soft in the way only worn cotton can be. She pulled the covers over her body, expecting the creak of a door, the slam of footsteps, a voice barking orders. But none came. The night passed in silence. And for the first time in her life, Etta Mai Colton slept through, till morning. No fists in the dark, no cold barn floor, no screams ripping her from dreams. Just the quiet breath of a man sleeping on the other side of the room. No chains. No threats, no fear. The safety didn't come with a speech, no declarations of rescue, no promises. It came in the form of a basin of water, a slice of bread, a door left unlocked. And for Etta, that was enough. For now. Under the golden wash of early summer sun, life on Calder Boone's ranch settled into a rhythm as quiet as the wind through the prairie grass. Etta rose each morning before the rooster crowed, slipping from her bed with the caution of someone still unsure if peace would last. She moved through the house like a whisper, dusting shelves, wiping windows, tidying a kitchen she barely used but longed to keep beautiful. She never waited for orders. She swept the floors twice each morning, even if they weren't dirty. She fed the chickens, letting them peck at the grain poured from her trembling hands. When one hen fluttered and clucked near her skirt, she didn't flinch. She simply stood, watched the sunlight bounce off its feathers, and felt something small shift inside her. Calder never asked her to do a thing. He kept to his work, mending fences, tending the horses, chopping firewood. At noon he'd come in, rinse his hands in the basin, and offer her half of whatever he had made. Sometimes it was beans. Sometimes hard biscuits. One afternoon it was fresh bread, thick, warm slices torn straight from the loaf. Etta held the piece in her hands, still steaming. She looked at him, quiet. "Should I save the rest?" she asked softly. "In case. There's no more tomorrow." Calder shook his head, wiping flour from his arms with a dish rag. "There'll be more. Tomorrow always brings something." She didn't know what to say to that, but she ate slowly, savoring each bite like it was her first taste of kindness. Days passed, and the silence between them turned from heavy to gentle. They spoke when needed, small things, simple things. He never pried. She never had to explain. Then one morning, Etta stepped outside to sweep the porch and found something resting on the top step. A handful of wildflowers, purple asters and golden sunbursts, tied with a frayed string. There was no note, no sign, just the bouquet, as delicate as breath, waiting for her. Her heart jumped. She picked it up carefully, cradling it like glass. No one had ever given her flowers. Not on her birthday, not when she cried, not even when she bled. She stood there for a long while, running her fingers over each soft petal, blinking hard against the sudden warmth in her eyes. That evening she went looking for Calder, not to ask, not to thank, just to see. She found him where she'd never dared go before, behind the barn, at the edge of a small grove of trees, where a rough wooden marker stood beside a ring of wild stones. He was sitting on a stump, elbows on knees, eyes fixed on nothing. His hat lay beside him, and in the breeze, his hair stirred against his neck. He held nothing. He said nothing. Etta approached slowly. Her breath hitched when she saw the name carved into the wood, Clara Boone. A sprig of dried lavender had been tucked into the carving. Calder did not turn. He did not need to. She knelt beside the grave, unwrapped the bouquet, and placed it at the base of the marker. Then she whispered, so softly it barely left her lips, "Thank you, for leaving him behind." She stood, her hands brushing against his as she rose, but still he said nothing. And yet, in that silence, something bloomed, something quiet, something sacred. A respect not spoken aloud. A sorrow shared by those who had loved and lost and still chosen to keep going. That night, Etta returned to the house with the scent of earth and flowers still on her hands. And for the first time, as she lay beneath the faded quilt in the little wooden bed, she did not wonder when it would all be taken away. For the first time she let herself believe, just a little, that she might be safe. That she might matter. That hope could grow even in the driest soil, if someone just remembered to bring the water. Morning came with the scent of rising dough and the hiss of eggs frying over a cast iron pan. Etta moved through the kitchen in quiet concentration, her bare feet padding softly over the worn wooden floorboards. She had woken up early, before even Calder, and decided, without fanfare or hesitation, that today she would make breakfast. She folded the blankets on the bed with careful hands, smoothing each edge until the corners lined up perfectly. The habit had been beaten into her long ago, but this morning it felt different. No fear chased her fingers. No shadow loomed over her shoulder. It was the first time she'd done it for herself. The bacon crackled as she flipped it, and she nearly jumped when Calder appeared in the doorway, still shrugging into his shirt. "Smells good," he said, voice low and rough from sleep. She nodded but didn't turn around. "Hope it's not burned." "It's breakfast. If it's warm, it's good enough." They sat together at the small table, and for a few minutes, the only sound was the clink of forks and the occasional chirp of a meadowlark outside the window. Then Calder pushed his plate back and glanced toward the cabinet where his rifle hung. "You ever shot a gun before?" he asked, not accusing, just curious. Etta shook her head. Her hands tightened around her cup. "Want to learn?" he asked. She looked up, surprised. "Why?" "Because you should know how to hold one. Not to shoot a man. Just so you ain't helpless if someone puts one in your hand." After a long moment, she nodded. They went out to the pasture after chores. Calder placed the rifle in her hands, showing her the weight, the balance, the way it pulled at her arms like a burden meant for someone stronger. But he stayed close, steadying her stance, murmuring instructions, as she pointed the muzzle at a broken fence post. She never pulled the trigger that day. But she learned how to breathe with it, how not to flinch. And when they walked back, she felt a strange, warm pride in the ache of her shoulders. That evening, as they sat on the porch, Etta spoke without looking at him. "I had a brother once," she said quietly. "Eli. He was older. When our mother died, he tried to take care of me." Calder didn't speak. He just listened. "They beat him for it," she continued. "Said he was soft. Said he should teach me how to obey, not protect me. One night they beat him so bad he couldn't breathe right again. He died a month later. Just went to sleep and didn't wake up." The silence that followed was soft, not heavy. Calder didn't offer hollow comfort. He just reached across and refilled her cup of coffee, letting her know she had been heard. The next morning, Calder tried to make bread. Etta watched from the doorway as he fumbled through the process, too much flour, not enough kneading, forgetting the salt. He dropped the dough once, burned the crust. When he pulled the smoking lump from the oven and turned to her with a grimace of defeat, she laughed. It was a small sound at first, awkward, hesitant. Then it grew, a real laugh, raw and surprised and bright as spring thunder. She clutched her stomach, tears springing to her eyes, not from sadness this time, but from the sheer absurd joy of it. Calder blinked, stunned. "That bad, huh?" he said, scratching the back of his neck. She could barely speak through the laughter. "It's a brick. A bread brick." He chuckled then, and they sat on the porch together, the blackened loaf between them like a trophy of their own ridiculous humanity. It was not love, not yet, but something had cracked open. Etta's smile lingered long after the laughter faded. Calder noticed how it lit her face, how it softened the lines of her worry, and pulled warmth into his chest. He didn't say anything, but he thought about it that night, lying awake in the dark, listening to the quiet hush of her breathing from the next room. The house, once filled only with ghosts and creaking wood, felt just a little fuller now. And for the first time in a long time, Calder Boone thought that maybe, just maybe, there was more to this life than surviving. Maybe healing wasn't thunder and fire. Maybe it was slow, silent, and steady, like bread rising, or a girl's laughter in a kitchen that used to be too quiet. The sun had just begun its climb when Calder spotted the dust cloud on the horizon. He leaned against the fence post, jaw clenched, and watched it draw closer. 2 riders. One broad-shouldered, hunched forward in a way he recognized all too well. The other sat upright, dressed too fine for the trail, his coat a dark velvet that shimmered against the sun. The kind of man who never dirtied his boots if he could help it. Etta was in the barn, feeding the hens. She had been humming, a soft, absent sound that stopped the moment she saw Calder's expression. He did not need to say anything. She wiped her hands and stepped back into the shadows as the riders reached the yard. Caleb was the first to speak. "Nice place," he said, swinging down from the saddle and spitting into the dirt. "Bit run down, but hell, I reckon she's used to worse." The other man dismounted more carefully. He removed his gloves finger by finger and tucked them into his breast pocket. "You must be Mr. Boone," the older man said. His voice was oil over gravel. "I am Mr. Claiborne. I represent certain interests back east. I believe you have something that does not belong to you." Calder said nothing. His hand rested lightly on the top rail of the fence, close to the hatchet hanging from a post. Claiborne pulled a folded sheet of parchment from his satchel and held it up like scripture. "This is a writ of transfer," he said. "Miss Etta McCrae was wagered and lost in a game of chance. According to this document witnessed and notarized, she is now the rightful property of Mr. Caleb McCrae, until such time as she is transferred, sold, or otherwise lawfully released." From the barn, Etta's breath caught. Calder heard it, quiet as it was. He pushed off the fence. "She's not property." "That is a matter of legal interpretation," Claiborne said, smiling thinly. "And of power. Which I dare say we have more of." Caleb stepped forward, eyes gleaming. "Look, Boone, we ain't here to cause trouble. We're just taking back what's ours. Hell, if it makes you feel better, we'll even pay you for the time you wasted feeding her." His gaze slithered past Calder, toward the barn. "She's looking real good these days. Got herself some weight back. Skin like peach butter. Ain't that right, darlin'?" Calder stepped between him and the barn. His voice was flat. "You got 3 seconds to get off my land." Claiborne raised a brow, almost amused. "Do not be rash, Mr. Boone. This can be settled without violence. We are offering you an opportunity. Sell her back with interest. You walk away richer. We walk away satisfied." Calder's stare didn't waver. "You walk away, or you don't walk at all." For a moment no one moved. Then Claiborne clicked his tongue and nodded to Caleb. "Let's go. For now." Caleb snarled. "You think you can keep her forever? Ain't no law says she belongs to you?" Calder didn't reply. He simply watched, steel-eyed, as they mounted up. Claiborne tipped his hat. "We will return, and next time we will not come with parchment." They rode off, dust curling behind them like smoke. Calder stood still for a long while, jaw tight, chest rising and falling with restrained fury. Etta stepped out from the barn's shadow, face pale. "They'll come back." "I know," Calder said. "He had papers." "I do not care." She looked at him, voice shaking. "What if they bring more men? What if the sheriff says they're right?" Calder turned to her then, and for the first time in days his eyes met hers fully. There was no fire in them, only stone. "Let them come," he said. "You're not going back." He walked past her, into the house. Etta followed, silent. That night neither of them slept. She sat at the window, staring out into the dark, clutching the old quilt around her shoulders like armor. Calder cleaned his rifle in silence, then placed it near the door, not as a threat, but as a promise. They did not speak again. But in the stillness, the fight began. Not just for safety, but for the right to exist without being owned. The wind howled across the open plains, rattling the loose panes of the barn and stirring dry dust into restless eddies. It was past midnight, the sky a deep, bruised black with no moon, no stars, only shadows thick as smoke. Calder Boone had just finished stoking the fire when he felt the shift in the air, like something holding its breath too long. He moved to the window. 3 horses. 3 riders. No lanterns. No good intentions. He grabbed the rifle and stepped onto the porch. "Etta," he said quietly over his shoulder, "get inside. Lock the back door." She appeared behind him, eyes wide. "Who is it?" Calder didn't turn. "They're back." The riders dismounted with the confidence of men who thought they had already won. Caleb led, a smirk playing under his filthy hat. Behind him, the old man Claiborne, looking less refined and more rabid in the dark. The third man was a stranger, tall and wiry, with a rifle slung across his back and eyes that glinted like broken glass. "Even in, Boone," Caleb said. "You got one last chance to be smart." Calder stepped off the porch, rifle steady in his hands. "I warned you." "We warned you," Claiborne snarled. "The girl's ours. And now there's a price for your defiance." The third man didn't speak. He pulled the rifle down, aimed it toward the house. Calder fired first. The shot missed on purpose, just to disrupt, to make them move. Chaos erupted. Caleb charged, swinging a rusted iron bar. Calder blocked with the rifle stock, the sound cracking through the yard. Claiborne lunged in from the side, a small pistol in his grip. Calder ducked, drove his shoulder into the old man's gut, sending him sprawling. The third man tackled Calder from behind. They fell hard, fists and knees and curses colliding in the dirt. Etta screamed from the doorway.
In the chaos, Claiborne staggered up and stumbled toward her.
He grabbed her by the arm, yanked her from the steps. She cried, kicking, clawing. He slapped her across the face, hard. She crumpled to her knees. He leaned over, his breath foul and greedy, and whispered, "You'll learn not to disobey, girl." Calder saw, and something in him snapped. He threw the stranger off, grabbed a broken fence post, and charged. The impact cracked against Claiborne's back with a sound like bones splintering. The old man screamed, crumpled beside Etta. Caleb came in from the side, blood on his temple. Calder met him head-on. They fought wild, fists flying, until Calder caught him square in the jaw and dropped him cold. The third man aimed again. But Calder was faster now. He swung the post like an axe. The rifle flew from the man's hands. A punch to the throat, another to the ribs. The stranger gasped, fell back, and scrambled away on all fours. Claiborne groaned, trying to crawl toward his horse. Caleb followed, limping. "You're dead men," Claiborne hissed. "This ain't over. The law's gonna hear of this. That girl ain't yours." Calder stood over them, chest heaving, bleeding from his brow and knuckles. "She's not anyone's," he said. "Not yours, not mine. But she sure as hell ain't property." They left in disgrace, bruised and beaten, vanishing into the dark the way cowards do, loud in threats, hollow in courage. The yard went silent again, save for Etta's sobs, soft and sharp against the dust. Calder dropped the post, rushed to her. She leaned against him, shaking, her face swollen, lip bleeding. He helped her to the porch, wordless. Just his arms and his steadiness. Inside he cleaned her wounds, as gently as he could. She flinched once but did not pull away. He gave her a cloth for the swelling, pressed a warm rag to his own brow. They sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, the firelight flickering between them like a shared wound. "I thought I'd forgotten how to hurt," she said quietly. "Turns out I just hadn't hurt like this in a while." Calder reached across the table, touched her hand. "You're stronger than any man I've ever known." She looked up, something breaking and blooming all at once in her eyes. "When I thought everything inside me was gone," she whispered, "you came along. And something started coming back." They didn't kiss.
They didn't fall into each other's arms like in the stories.
But Calder took her hand, held it like a vow, and Etta let him. For now, that was enough. Not romance. Not salvation. Just the truth of survival, held between two broken people, both still standing. The morning after the fight brought an unexpected sound, wagon wheels creaking over hard ground. Calder stood on the porch, his arm still bandaged, unsure whether to reach for his rifle or his hat. But it was not more enemies. It was neighbors. Folks he had barely exchanged more than a nod with in years. A grizzled woman named May brought warm bread wrapped in cloth. A quiet old man named Eli unloaded rough-cut lumber from his cart. Another handed over a jar of honey with a mumbled, "Heard you had trouble. Thought you could use this." Calder blinked. "Why?" May shrugged. "'Cause it's right. And maybe 'cause you finally gave them bastards what they deserved." Etta stood just inside the door, watching the quiet parade with wide eyes. She looked at Calder as if seeing him anew, not as a lone rancher, but as a man people might choose to stand behind. By mid-afternoon the yard was stacked with supplies. Calder, unsure how to say thank you, simply nodded. Etta, her lips still swollen, helped carry things inside, her hands moving with more confidence than he had ever seen. That peace lasted exactly 3 days. On the fourth morning, 2 riders approached. Caleb and Claiborne. No backup this time, no hired gun, just them, their pride bloody but not buried. Claiborne's eyes were hard, his gray coat buttoned tight despite the heat. Caleb had a bandage wrapped around his jaw, the bruise beneath it turning sickly green. They dismounted, kicked dust off their boots, and sauntered to the porch like they still owned something. "Well now," Claiborne sneered. "Look at this, domestic bliss. How sweet." Etta stepped onto the porch before Calder could. She stood tall, chin lifted, hands steady at her sides. "You're not welcome here," she said. Caleb snorted, then winced, the sound cracking against his swollen jaw. "Girl, you still don't get it," Claiborne said. "Your property. I got the paperwork. I got the law." Etta took a step forward. Claiborne reached for the folded paper in his pocket. She slapped him across the face, open-palmed, sharp as a gunshot. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," she said, voice like steel. Claiborne staggered back, stunned. "You little." "I'm not little," she cut in. "And I'm not yours." Calder stepped out behind her then, not saying a word. He stood tall, hands empty, eyes calm, like a storm holding back for the sake of silence. Claiborne saw it, that wall of muscle and will, and something in him faltered. Caleb looked away, the fight gone from his shoulders. "You think this is over?" Claiborne hissed, touching the welt blooming on his cheek. Etta didn't flinch. "It is if you walk away." A long, ugly pause. Then Claiborne spit in the dirt, turned to his horse. Caleb followed. They mounted up in silence, their pride shattered louder than any bullet. As they rode off, Claiborne shouted over his shoulder, "You'll regret this. Mark my words." But neither Etta nor Calder watched them go. They were already turning back toward the house. Later that evening, as the sun melted into orange over the hills, Calder sat on the porch steps, rubbing the back of his neck. Etta brought him a cup of coffee, sat beside him. He glanced at her, the fading bruises, the straightness of her spine. "You were brave today," he said. She sipped from her own cup, then looked out over the fields. "So were you. But not just today. You've been brave every day, even when you didn't have to be." He studied her face in the fire-washed dusk. "I used to think if I stayed quiet enough, the world would leave me alone. And now." He looked at her. "Now I think, maybe I don't want to be left alone." She smiled, soft and sure. "Me neither." The silence that followed was full, not empty. Then Calder said, almost to himself, "We're not running anymore." Etta nodded, her voice just above a whisper. "No, we're not." The stars blinked awake one by one, and the land breathed quiet around them. Two souls still healing, but finally, undeniably, home. The fire crackled low in the hearth, casting soft gold across the wooden walls of the cabin. Outside, crickets sang to the night. Inside, Calder and Etta sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, their plates nearly empty, the silence between them easy now, earned. Etta leaned back slightly, her fingers tracing the rim of her tin cup. The flames flickered in her eyes. She looked at him, the question rising from somewhere quiet, somewhere old. "Do you think I'm still broken?" she asked. Calder set down his fork, met her gaze. He did not flinch. Instead, he stood, walked to the small chest beside the fireplace, and pulled out something wrapped in faded cloth. He returned to her side, unwrapped it slowly, a blade slender and worn. The handle bore a simple engraving. "This was hers," he said, "my wife's. She used it to cut bread, rope, whatever the day brought." Etta reached out, touched the blade with reverence. Calder looked at her. It got chipped once. Real bad. She was furious, thought it was ruined. "I told her, it's not about whether it's broken. It's about what you do after you know it is." He placed the knife gently in Etta's hands. "You're not ruined. You're just reforged." Etta held it close, almost like a prayer. She did not cry. She had done enough of that in past lives. But something shifted, something deep and final. She nodded once. "Thank you." Years passed like the wind across the plains. The house changed shape. Fences mended. A garden grew. Etta stayed. She learned to ride with confidence, to shoot straight, to laugh without fear. She sang to the goats, argued with the wind, read every book Calder brought home from town. Then one fall day she returned to the place where it all began. The town barely recognized her. She rode in on her own horse, head held high. She wore boots caked in honest dirt and a rifle across her back. Her name on the hotel ledger was Lena Boone. No one whispered about a girl taken and sold. They spoke of a woman who fought for a place in the world and built it with her own hands. Calder waited for her outside the livery, hat in hand, smile easy. She stepped down from the saddle, looked at him with a fire that had never gone out. "Ready to go home?" he asked. She nodded. And together, they rode back to the quiet land that had made them whole. Not as rescuer and rescued, but as two people who had chosen each other. Not despite the breaks in their hearts, but because of them. Thank you for watching Struggling Rancher Rescued an 18-year-old girl from a cruel household. What happened next changed everything. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that sometimes healing begins not with words, but with quiet acts of kindness, then we invite you to stay with us. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories for more powerful tales of survival, slow-burning love, and second chances on the American frontier. Because out here, even the most broken hearts can find their way home. Hit the bell so you never miss a story that could change the way you see love, hope, and the strength that hides in silence. We'll see you on the next ride.